Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miriam Aliso, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar, The Family Guideposts, Engaging in Youth Transitions. You will notice on your screen a screenshot of an example of the GoToWebinar interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop in the upper right corner. You are listening in using your computer speaker system by default. If you would like to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. Be sure to put your unique PIN. To the right of the GoToWebinar PowerPoint viewer is the GoToWebinar control panel. This is where you have the option to select the way you hear the webinar, raise your hand, and ask questions by text. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the Questions for Staff pane or of the control panel. You may send in your questions or comments at any time during the presentation. We will collect these and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. You can also download the webinar handouts and PowerPoint. They are available to you on the control panel. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be sent to you when it's available. Okay. I pass it to Josie.
Yes, thank you, Miriam, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Muted.
I really appreciate it, and I appreciate Mindy Larson and everyone at IEL for their work on the Family Guidepost. This is a newly updated Family Guidepost, and I'm really excited that we will have the opportunity to discuss this. My apologies for some background noise. But Mindy, I'm so excited that you are joining us. And I want to, before I turn it over to you, I just wanted to let everyone know that if you are not aware of RAISE, RAISE is a national RSA funded parent training and information center. And we provide support to individuals, families, and RSA funded parent centers around transition and helping youth and families transition into adulthood. Those individuals with disabilities and transitioning from pediatrics to adult medicine, employment, higher education. And we really feel that the work that IEL does is so vital to making sure that a family is progressing and moving forward along with the young adult. And so, Mindy, I want to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Josie. Hi, everyone. I'm Mindy Larson. I'm with the Institute for Educational Leadership in Washington, D.C., and I'm happy to be with you today to provide an overview of a new resource that we have available for families of transition age youth with disabilities. It's called the Family Guideposts, Engaging in Youth Transition. But first, I want to provide some context about our organization and what led us to develop this resource. IEL houses the National Collaborative on Workforce and Disability for Youth, which is a national technical assistance center funded by the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Disability Employment Policy. And our work focuses on the transition needs of all youth, including youth with disabilities and other disconnected youth. Our mission is to improve youth's access to high quality services in integrated settings to improve their employment, education, and independent living outcomes. Our TA Center, which is started in 2001, builds the capacity of organizations and professionals in the workforce development system and other youth service systems. And we also focus on building the capacity and engaging youth and their families to advocate for what they need in the transition to adulthood. We recognize that families play an essential role in assisting young people to make the right choices at the right times based on the right information, which is why our Technical Assistance Center has always had a strong emphasis on family engagement throughout transition. I wanted to note that we broadly define families as including individuals who are related biologically, but also related emotionally or legally. Um, Young people can belong to families of single parents or coupled parents. They may be supported by their siblings, grandparents, or aunts and uncles. Many families are blended. Some are adoptive or foster families. And some young people also are supported by unrelated individuals whom they lived with and received support from. So we just want to acknowledge that when we talk about families, we talk about parents and other caregivers and other caring adults that young people consider to be their family. Next slide, please. So all of the work of our Technical Assistance Center is grounded in a research-based national framework called the Guideposts for Success. Hopefully, some of you are already familiar with the Guideposts for Success, which identifies what all youth need for successful transition to adulthood. It's organized in terms of what matters for all youth during transition in these 5 areas, which we'll talk more about throughout the webinar. And each area also highlights things specifically relevant to young people with disabilities and their transition. The framework was initially written primarily for policymakers and service providers to help inform their decisions about what strategies, services, supports, and opportunities they should be providing to youth and their families during transition to adulthood. However, the framework can also assist young people and their families to become informed about and navigate the transition process. Next slide. So we wanted to make the information provided in the guideposts more useful to families by creating a resource specifically for families, which is how we came to develop the Family Guidepost. We worked in partnership with the Pacer Center to create a practical guide that would help families and caregivers to understand each part of the Guidepost for Success and suggest specific actions that families can take to become fully informed about the young person's options during transition, to help support young people in creating and pursuing their life goals, and also how to advocate for improvements so that the youth and their youth specifically, but also all youth, benefit from high quality transition opportunities. On the webinar platform under the handout section, I just wanted to note our preview copies of the guide, which will be published online in May. The primary, next slide, please. So the primary authors of this guide are parents and family members of individuals with disabilities, as well as some individuals with disabilities themselves. And in developing the guide, they were really aiming to share key information about the process of transition from secondary school to pursuing post-secondary education and training, to obtaining employment and pursuing lifelong career goals, and to community living. NCW Youth and the authors of the Family Guideposts share some assumptions which are important to communicate upfront. The guideposts for success are based on the following beliefs: a belief in holding high expectations for all youth, in ensuring equal opportunities, supporting full participation through self-determination and independent living, pursuing competitive employment and self-sufficiency, and engaging in individualized transition planning that's person-driven and culturally and linguistically appropriate. Next slide, please. In addition, the family guideposts were built upon several beliefs about families. The belief that all families want what's best for their youth, that they all have the capacity to support their young person's learning and development, recognizing that every family has their strengths and certain knowledge, particularly knowledge about the young person.
Is everybody goes on spring break Friday for the Easter break or Easter.
Sorry about that. I just muted Peg. And that I apologize, let me pick back up where I was, that all families have the capacity to support their children's learning and development because they each have strengths and knowledge, and that can be an asset to the organizations that are also working with youth and families. That parents and organizations and schools that are working with youth should be equal partners, and the responsibility for building that partnership really rests with the service provider or the school, as oftentimes families feel like it's not really their place to ask for partnership with a school or a service agency. So we like to emphasize the fact that that we expect and encourage schools and service agencies to be the one to reach out and intentionally build partnerships with families and parents. Next slide, please. So with that context, we're now going to review the contents of the guide, which is actually 2 companion guides. We're primarily going to focus in this webinar on the parent and caregiver edition, but I also want to note that there's a youth
She's really
programs
good about
edition for professionals and organizations
pushing
who
it right
work
back.
with families. The parent and caregiver edition includes actions for how families can become fully informed, how they can support youth with navigating transition, and how they can advocate for improvement. Before I go any further, I want to take a brief pause here and ask for some participation. I'd love to hear some input from participants on today's webinar in response to a question that I have. So take a minute to reflect on preparing young people for transition to adulthood. When you think about that, what do you think families need to become informed about? If you have a response, please take a minute to share it. I find it really helpful to hear what stands out for you and what's important in terms of what's important for families to know in order to support their youth in transition. I'd also encourage you to share any questions you have so far so that we can start to collect questions as they come up for you. I'm just going to take a minute to see if we're getting any comments or questions. There's a question here about what resources are available for supporting youth through adulthood. Oh, I believe this is a comment. So I said, what do families need to become informed about? And Jane says, what resources are available for supporting their youth through adulthood and how to balance their advocacy with supporting their child's self-advocacy. Great point. Another response, families need to understand the school's responsibility to provide a robust transition plan in the IEP, not determined through one quick conversation with the student. Next response, families need to be informed about the spirit and intent of the legislation favoring inclusion and competitive integrated employment. It's great to see some of these things that stood out for you. Connections to employment support, secondary education, DD coordinator, and other supports. I think it's important for families to know about self-determination, supported decision-making, and transition. And that transition doesn't just happen at 14, but instead in small ways throughout the lifespan. They need to know what adult services are available. All right, and one last one. What services are available at colleges and universities for young people? Better understanding of transition process and developing a vision for adult life. Great. Thank you to everyone who shared your responses. So there's so many things. There really is a ton of information, a lot of things for families to become informed about. And really that is the purpose of this guide. We wanted to create a resource that would be available freely to families, independent from any particular institution or school or agency, to orient them to a full range of information relevant to transition to adulthood, both the things that are important for all students and young people in this transition phase of life, as well as some things that are very specific to young people with disabilities and their transition to becoming adults with disabilities and moving to adult service systems. So thank you so much for helping me to get a sense of where you're coming from on this topic. So next slide, please. So we're going to go more in depth on the parent and caregiver edition of the guide, but I also wanted to note that the youth program edition is a shorter companion that's available. We recommend that youth programs and organizations that work with youth and families read and utilize the parent and caregiver edition with families. However, we also divided some information out specifically for the youth program or provider audience to talk about the ways that programs and organizations can support families. The program edition is aligned with a part of the guidepost for success called family involvement and supports. So this edition is emphasizing strategies for supporting parent and family efficacy. It suggests actions for empowering, engaging, and supporting families with holding high expectations for their young people. Ways for families to remain involved as young people are moving from adolescence into young adulthood. How to support families with taking an active role in transition planning. And also a variety of things to support families with helping youth to access information that they need for the transition process, accessing networks, understanding and communicating regarding the impact of their disability. Next slide, please. Helping youth to learn about disability rights and responsibilities, learning about various agencies and service options to access services, and also understanding individualized planning tools that are useful for the transition process. So that's just a quick overview of what the programs edition goes into more detail on. And as I said, we are focusing most of today's content on the contents of the parent and caregiver version. Next slide, please. So next I'm going to provide a brief introduction to each of the guideposts and share just a sample of the suggested actions for families. If you've looked already at the downloadable handout, the parent and caregiver version of the guide, you'll see that there's really a wealth of suggested actions for families within each of the guidepost areas. And unfortunately, there's so much content there, fortunately and unfortunately, that it wouldn't be possible to talk through all of that on this webinar. So I'm choosing to highlight some examples to illustrate the information that's available on the guide and help you think about how you might use it with families. So the first area of the guidepost, school-based preparation, is about it identifies what all youth need in their experiences in school as they're preparing for transition to adulthood. So this is about what is happening in secondary school years and in order to prepare young people for successfully moving out of high school into post-secondary education, employment, and independent living. All youth need academic programs that are based on clear state standards. All youth need access to career and technical education programs, and those programs should be based on professional and industry standards. All youth can benefit from small and safe learning environments. including extra supports such as tutoring or other academic supports. All young people also benefit from supports from and working with highly qualified staff. And it's important for all youth to have graduation standards that include different options. Next slide, please. Some additional things that youth with disabilities need related to school-based preparation are understanding how to use their individual transition plans to drive their personal instruction, having access to specific and individual learning accommodations while they're in school, being able to develop knowledge of reasonable accommodations that they can request and control in education settings. This includes assessment accommodations. And being supported by highly qualified transitional support staff who may or may not be staff of the school. Next slide, please. So the Family Guideposts guide goes on to discuss the set of things in this guidepost area and provides a variety of information to help families become informed about this part of transition. There are a variety of suggested actions for families related to school-based preparation. In terms of what they need to become informed about, it includes understanding the variety of high school program options, which can include career technical education, certain course requirements if students are pursuing a college preparatory track, and how the different program options align with expectations for careers or college, as well as graduation requirements. Families need to get informed about how their student is doing, understanding how they're progressing towards graduation or achieving a diploma or credential in high school, as well as what they're engaged in and doing around career and academic planning. Families should get informed about how the school's performing. Many schools have online report cards or other ways of sharing information about how students in the school are doing overall and how the school is meeting students' needs. It's important for families to get informed about the variety of local resources that families can use to support their students' educational experience. This includes understanding and what different parent information and training centers are available to them, or different parent groups or associations. Families need to get informed about their young person's disability and how it impacts their learning and what individual accommodations and supports for learning the young person needs. And then families should also be getting informed at this stage about the different eligibility requirements for adult services in preparation for transition out of secondary education and seeking to get connected to these agencies early. There's also a wide range of things families can do to support their young people in transition related to their school-based preparation. This includes communicating the value of education to achieving whatever the young person's life goals and dreams are, and carefully considering together their decisions about education, including what courses to take in secondary school or what post-secondary education to pursue, what diploma options to select. Families can support students by communicating the importance of persistence and work ethic, expecting that the student will do their best towards achieving their goals, and emphasizing the importance of good study habits and completing assignments on time. Families can provide support by talking with young people about their strengths and interests in terms of what they enjoy in school, what courses are most interesting to them, and what they like doing and what they're interested in terms of potential careers, and talking about how that can inform their plans both during high school and beyond. Families can provide support to students for exploring different post-secondary education and training options. This can include interactive things like visiting college campuses or training programs of interest to help students get a clear sense of what different options look like beyond high school and how they intersect with their goals and interests for the future. Some of the things that families can advocate for include talking with the school about setting and holding high expectations for their students. It's important communicating that the family believes it's important for their student to participate in the most rigorous options possible while also having flexibility to their individual needs. Families can advocate for a positive school climate and inclusion, to ask for curriculum and program options that are based on universal design for learning, and positive behavioral intervention supports. Families can also advocate for different enrichment opportunities like summer programs, after-school programs, and more, as well as opportunities for youth to learn about self-advocacy and self-determination skills. We also emphasize in the guide that families should be learning about and utilizing any advocacy resources such as equity centers, parent centers, and other types of support centers. Next slide, please. So guidepost area 2 is career preparation and work-based learning. On this slide, you see the things we've identified from research are important for all youth related to career preparation, including participating in career assessments to identify their preferences and interests related to employment, having structured exposure to post-secondary education and other learning opportunities beyond high school, as well as exposure to a variety of careers that lead to a living wage, opportunities to engage in a range of work-based exploration activities. And this could be work-based learning, which can be visiting workplaces, participating in job shadowing, and can be more involved, such as having an internship or a mentoring experience with an employer. Having multiple on-the-job training experiences that really give them hands-on opportunities to learn, to practice and learn work skills, including soft skills. And also opportunities to learn firsthand about skills specific to the occupation or career path that they're interested in. Next slide, please. In addition, youth with disabilities need to understand benefits planning. They need to have the opportunity to understand how employment can impact their benefits and what options they have for maintaining certain benefits, particularly health benefits, while also earning. They need opportunities to learn about how to communicate their disability as it relates to work and any supports and accommodations they need in a work setting, and how to find and formally request or secure the supports and accommodations that they need in employment. Next slide, please. So the actions that are recommended for families, get informed about what the school offers in terms of career preparation, career assessments, and work-based learning experiences. A lot of times families aren't aware of what the school may be offering, and we highly recommend that you talk to the school, the counselors, and the teachers to have a full understanding of what's being offered and what students can be taking advantage of. Schools are increasingly using more universally available career and academic planning tools and processes to help students assess their career interests and think about creating a plan for their courses and work experiences to help them move towards their career goals. Find out if your school has what we refer to as an individualized learning plan, which is open to any student, is meant to be used by any general education student, including students with disabilities. And sometimes those include online portfolio systems that have a variety of career assessment tools and different ways that students can develop career plans. For students with disabilities, be sure to find out whether whatever tools and planning resources and assessment resources for career exploration are being used are available to students with disabilities and fully accessible, or that accommodations are provided to make them accessible. Find out what's available in the community in terms of career exploration and preparation and work-based learning experiences. Some of the ways that families can provide support include helping students understand the relationship between their benefits and their career choices, helping students to get actively engaged in career exploration and work-based learning experiences. Sometimes that means helping students find or young people find the different opportunities to go into workplaces, to visit workplaces, to connect with a career-related mentor, or to apply for an internship or a summer job. Families can support their young people by being sure to communicate high expectations for competitive integrated employment and working towards self-sufficiency as they move into adulthood. Families can also use their informal networks, their social networks, friends, family members, neighbors, people that parents know or family members know through their own employment, to help students connect to opportunities for learning about careers and gaining work experience. So often young people find jobs and internships through these informal connections. And then families can advocate in a variety of ways for their students' career preparation, including working with the school to ensure that they're providing meaningful activities and programs for career preparation and work-based learning, and ensuring that these are inclusive and accessible for students with disabilities. Advocating for the school to teach youth about their rights related to their disabilities, and learn strategies for when and how to disclose their disability in a work setting, and how to ask for reasonable accommodations related to internships and employment. Next slide, please. So before I go on, I'm going to ask once again, just to see if there's any input from participants on today's webinar. When you think about career preparation, what else would you suggest that families do to support their young people? If you have a response, please do share it. And I'm going to keep going for now, and I will check back to see if we've had any responses. Just taking a quick look to see if anybody has added anything to the earlier responses. Nope, not yet. Okay. Well, take your time. If you have a response, ideas on suggestions for what families can do to support youth career preparation, would love to hear from you. Okay, so the next guidepost area, youth development and leadership. Research indicates that all youth need and can benefit from mentoring activities that help them connect to caring adults. They also benefit from peer-to-peer mentoring opportunities. Exposure to role models is also very valuable as young people are developing through adolescence and developing a sense of their identity and figuring out their interests. All youth need a variety of training and personal skills such as self-advocacy and conflict resolution. And youth also need exposure to personal leadership and youth development activities, which might include community service, for example. Next slide, please. In addition, youth with disabilities need mentors and role models, including people with and without disabilities. Individuals with disabilities can benefit greatly from getting to know and having role models or mentors who have a disability, who have the same disability as them. And similarly, they benefit from mentors and role models who aren't individuals with disabilities or don't share their disability. We encourage both. Youth with disabilities may also need to learn about disability history, culture, and pride, as well as the variety of public policies and rights and responsibilities related to having a disability. Next slide, please. So some of the actions for families related to supporting youth development and leadership include getting informed about what's available to young people in terms of mentoring, leadership development, and other activities that are going to promote positive youth development. These activities might include getting engaged in clubs, sports, community service projects, finding out about and getting engaged in different types of leadership roles in the community or at school, or other ways for young people to exercise their voice and speak out on issues that matter to them. Families should also identify what opportunities are available for youth to learn and practice self-determination and self-advocacy. These opportunities may be provided as a part of what's happening for students with disabilities in school through special education transition. Vocational rehabilitation agencies are increasingly partnering and collaborating with schools to provide pre-employment transition services. And those services include helping students develop self-advocacy skills. Another resource where students and youth may learn self-advocacy and self-determination are centers for independent living. Families can provide support by encouraging youth to practice decision-making and reasonable risk-taking. So again, not taking unduly risks, but encouraging young people to be willing to step out of their comfort zone, to do something they haven't done before, to try something different, to push themselves and challenge themselves. Families can also help provide meaningful opportunities for young people to be part of goal setting and planning, whether it's at home or in school. Families can also encourage youth to participate in mentoring, different opportunities and activities with positive peers, and different leadership opportunities. Finally, families can advocate by working with the school to ensure that all youth have access to youth development and leadership opportunities, whether that's different forms of leadership development training, enrichment programs, ensuring that the school is offering all that they can to help students develop these skills and experiences related to the full array of youth development competencies. Families can also request that schools establish procedures for youth-led IEP meetings. Youth-led IEPs are a very valuable way for young people to learn self-advocacy and self-determination and practice it in the context of the IEP transition planning process. Next slide, please. So, guideposts for connecting activities refers to the full range of support services and other opportunities that young people need to achieve their goals and meet their individualized needs. So this is everything from access to mental and physical health services, transportation and housing. It may be different types of academic support, including tutoring, learning about financial planning and management, how to budget, how to manage money, as well as connecting to other services and opportunities in the community, such as recreation or sports or faith-based communities, and so much more. There's such a wide range of supportive services and many things that are individualized to the young person's needs or interests or goals, that they need to become familiar with how to connect to these as they move out of high school and into adulthood, when in some cases they're aging out of eligibility for adolescent or school-based services and may need to understand and pursue eligibility or connection to the adult services corresponding to their needs. Next slide, please. So young people with disabilities may need, in some cases, to learn about how to acquire appropriate assistive technologies. They may need support with learning how to navigate the community orientation and mobility or travel training. They need exposure to post-program support, such as independent living centers and other consumer-driven community-based support service agencies. Some young people may need access to personal assistance services, including attendants, readers, interpreters, and others. And young people with disabilities can, as they're moving into and toward employment, really do need access to benefits planning, counseling to help them understand the implications of earning a living. Next slide, please. So actions for families involve becoming fully informed about the full range of available community services. One of the things that we emphasize in the guide is understanding the summary of performance for students with IEPs and understanding the state's guidelines related to the summary performance and how it can be used to speed up the determination of eligibility for adult services. Families need to understand what their medical insurance covers beyond age 18 and whether students will age out or young people and their family will age out or will be covered up to age 26, and what options are available to ensure that the young person continues to have coverage for their healthcare needs. Families can provide support by exposing the young person to a variety of services. For example, public transportation options if the young person is going to in order to become more independent, if they don't drive, they need to learn how to use and become comfortable with using public transportation. Some young people will need support for becoming drivers and getting a driver's license and getting access to an automobile. Families can support young people by helping them learn how to manage their money responsibly, including understanding financial aid for post-secondary education. And families can also provide support by encouraging young people to build a network of natural supports. A lot of times young people can find information and learn how to access what they need related to their individual goals or needs by utilizing their network. So helping young people develop their own network and learn how to develop a network as they're spending more time outside the home or in the community and in different settings, how to develop those contacts in order to develop relationships to find the resources that they need. Families can also advocate by sharing their own family story about the impact of services on youth success in school and adult life. And they can encourage schools to develop procedures to provide families with information about the full range of adult service agencies that young people may need access to following high school. Next slide, please. All right. So those were the four guidepost areas that are covered in the Parent and Caregiver edition of the Family Guideposts Guide. As I mentioned, there is a fifth area of the guidepost called family involvement and support, and that is covered in more detail in the youth programs edition of the guide, because those things are much more structured as actions for programs and organizations that work with families and youth in order to support families of young people who, as they're making the transition to adulthood. So this is what I've covered has just been a sampling of the information that's available and suggestions for families contained in the parent and caregiver edition of the guide. As I said earlier, the program edition provides additional suggestions for organizations as you're working with youth and families to consider how to support them through the transition process. We encourage organizations that work with families to read both guides and to share it and discuss it with families. You can consider using this guide as a point of discussion and conversation with families about different aspects of transition. And we mentioned in the guide for families, but this also applies to organizations, that you can start small by focusing in on what's most relevant to the family at the time. So for example, a family may be particularly focused on a particular point in the transition process that's relevant to what their young person is doing right now. Maybe it's related to thinking about getting a first job. And so you could assist the family in looking more specifically at the guidepost area for career preparation and thinking about what actions they could take and what support that you can provide to them for helping their young person move towards applying for and obtaining a first job. So while we have access to the preview copies here in the webinar, I again invite you to visit our website in May when you can download the final version of these publications on our website. That concludes my presentation, and we have time left for questions and discussion. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, I think, to check in to see if we've received any questions.
Yes. Well, these were responses to your previous question that
Great.
we did not get back to.
Okay, so I can go back to those.
Yeah.
I'm looking through what we have here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share a comment from Beth, who said that we need to be careful about giving the responsibility for functional skills training to the schools, because this can lead to schools creating artificial environments and situations that promote more segregation of students. Families can facilitate this kind of training and support for youth in more natural, inclusive ways with support from schools and others. Thanks for that point, Beth. Scrolling up to see. Jerry says, related to my question about suggestions for supporting youth with their career preparation, he says, help students figure out what they're interested in and good at. Rosalind says, questionnaires and assessments to see what they're really interested in and where their skills are. So those are a couple of additional responses to my last question. Thanks to those who shared some input. I always appreciate hearing what stands out to you and what's important to you. If anybody has any other questions on the presentation or about the guide, we still have time. Feel free to use the questions box to submit any questions you may have.
as well if need be. Anybody who thinks of questions later can please contact Mindy. I think we have, yes, her contact information is there, and you can get in touch with her. We will be providing the recordings and handouts and anything else online within a week, so you can check back on the RAISE website for those. And let's pass it back over to Josie.
And Jessica, would you mind going back one slide?
Okay.
Great, perfect. I just wanted to, again, acknowledge that that the Family Guideposts guides were developed with support from the Office of Disability Employment Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor, and that we developed the guide in partnership with the PACER Center and are very thankful for their partnership in developing this resource.
Okay, Mindy, thank you so much for this presentation. I think this information has been unbelievably helpful, and I know that these guides have been helpful for so many individuals, so it's great to see an updated new guide. So thank you. As was mentioned earlier, if you signed up for this webinar, you will get notification of when this is available online. We will be posting it once it has been closed captioned, so I would assume early next week. And then also you will be getting a survey to evaluate this webinar, and we always appreciate the inputs. So thank you all, thank you Mindy, and thank you for everyone joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to present today.
Goodbye everyone.